Okay, the next little section of songs all have sort of a relationship to the theater or the stage in general. And the first two are by Noel Coward, who was quite a prolific writer, producer, actor in both Britain and the U.S. And this is a song that was not in a show, in a stage show per se. It was written and performed in various reviews, musical reviews, and concerts, and actually performed by three men dressed as the three theatrical dames. So each of these verses was sung by a different one of the actors. I started from scratch in a house with a thatch, with two very old, unpleasant ladies. My parents were dead, so I finally fled and appeared in a tent outside Burton-on-Trent in a very small part in Quo Vadis. I toured in East Lynne and the wages of sin, till I couldn't tell one from the other. Then a rich friend and achieved the West End in a farce called She Did It for Mother. Three theatrical dames, eminent and respectable. Our accents are undetectable, and though we've achieved our aims, if they knew what we'd done in 1891, they certainly wouldn't have made us dames. My very first step was Shakespearean rep, where an awful old ham used to train us. I'd nothing to do in The Dream and the Shrew, but I carried a spear in King John and King Lear, and a hatchet in Coriolanus. I ranted for years in pavilions on piers, till my spirits were really at zero. Then I got a small role of a tart with a soul in a play by Sir Arthur Pinero. Three theatrical dames, models of prim propriety, accepted by high society because of our famous names. If they'd asked us to tea in 1893, they certainly wouldn't have made us dames. I made my debut in a canvas canoe in a horrid American drama. It wasn't a hit, so I left the legit, and I got myself backed in a musical act called A Night in the Garden of Karma. An agent called Klein said, I'm willing to sign whoever that girl who unveils is. So I got my first chance with a biblical dance in a flop, The Old Prince of Wales's. Three theatrical dames, each of our houses we adorn with photographs of the highly born in elegant silver frames. If they'd caught us in Crewe in 1892, they certainly wouldn't have made us dames. Three theatrical dames, prominent high and mighty girls. The fact that we once were flighty girls, our manner today disclaims. If they'd seen our high kicks in 1896, they certainly wouldn't have made us dames. That was written in approximately the 1920s, by the way, so they're referring to about 30 years before that. Okay, the next one is called Mrs. Worthington. Don't put your daughter on the stage, Mrs. Worthington. Don't put your daughter on the stage. The profession is overcrowded, and the struggle's pretty tough. And admitting the fact she's burning to act, that isn't quite enough. She has nice hands, give the wretched girl her due. But don't you think her bust is too developed for her age? I repeat, Mrs. Worthington, sweet Mrs. Worthington, don't put your daughter on the stage. Regarding yours, dear Mrs. Worthington, of Wednesday the 23rd, although your baby may be keen on a stage career, how can I make it clear this is not a good idea? For her to hope, dear Mrs. Worthington, is, on the face of it, absurd. Her personality is not, in reality, exciting enough, inviting enough for this particular sphere. Don't put your daughter on the stage, Mrs. Worthington. Don't put your daughter on the stage. She's a bit of an ugly duckling, you must honestly confess, and the width of her seat would surely defeat her chances of success. It's a loud voice, and though it's not exactly flat, she'll need a little more than that to earn a living wage. On my knees, Mrs. Worthington, please, Mrs. Worthington, don't put your daughter on the stage. Don't put your daughter on the stage, Mrs. Worthington. Don't put your daughter on the stage. Though they've said at the School of Acting she was lovely as Peer Gynt, I fear on the whole an ingenue role would emphasize her squint. She's a big girl, and though her teeth are fairly good, she's not the type I ever would be eager to engage. No more buts, Mrs. Worthington. Nuts, Mrs. Worthington. Don't put your daughter on the stage. This next one is by Cole Porter from Kiss Me Kate in 1948, with a lot more Shakespearean references. This particular song is called Brush Up Your Shakespeare, and it's sung by two gangsters who join the cast of the play Taming of the Shrew, which is the play within the play Kiss Me Kate. The girls today in society go for classical poetry, so to win their hearts, one must quote with ease Aeschylus and Euripides. One must know Homer, and believe me, Beau, Sophocles and also Sappho, unless you know Shelley and Keats and Pope. Dainty Debbies will call you a dope, but the poet of them all, who will stardom simply raven, is the poet people call the Bard of Stratford-on-Avon. Brush up your Shakespeare. Start quoting him now. Brush up your Shakespeare, and the women will wow. Just declaim a few lines from Othello, and they'll think you're a hell of a fellow. If your blonde won't respond when you flatter her, tell her what Tony told Cleopatra. If she fights when her clothes you're a mussing, what are clothes? What you do about nothing? Brush up your Shakespeare, and they'll all kowtow. Brush up your Shakespeare. Start quoting him now. Brush up your Shakespeare, and the women you will wow. With the wife, the British ambassador, try a crack out of Troilus and Cressida. If she says she won't buy it or take it, make her take it. What's more, as you like it. If she says your behavior is heinous, kick her right in the Coriolanus. Brush up your Shakespeare, and they'll all kowtow. Brush up your Shakespeare. Start quoting him now. Brush up your Shakespeare, and the women will wow. If you can't be a ham and do Hamlet, they will not give a damn or a damlet. Just recite an occasional sonnet, and your lap will have honey upon it. When your baby is pleading for pleasure, let her sample your measure for measure. Brush up your Shakespeare, and they'll all kowtow. Better mention the merchant of Venice. When her sweet pound of flesh you would menace. If her virtue at first she defends, well, just remind her that all's well that ends well. And if still she won't give you a bonus, you know what Venus got from Adonis. Brush up your Shakespeare, and they'll all kowtow. Brush up your Shakespeare. Start quoting him now. Brush up your Shakespeare, and the women will wow. If your Goyle is a Washington Heights dream, treat the kid to a Midsummer Night's Dream. If she then wants an all-by-herself night, let her rest every 11th or 12th night. If because your heat she gets huffy, Simply play on and lay on McDuffie. Brush up your Shakespeare, start quoting him now, and the women you will wow. So tonight, just recite to your matey, kiss me Kate, kiss me Kate, kiss me Katie. Brush up your Shakespeare, and they'll all kowtow.